Well, hello Internet! Welcome to my game design and programming tutorial. In this one tutorial, I'm going to first design the game. I'm going to explain Sprite Sheets, how they're used, numerous other different things, and then I'm going to program the complete game using pure JavaScript. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, so I decided with my original game that I was going to basically create a game that was similar to Rock Band or Guitar Hero, and I wanted to mainly address the major problem people have with this game, which is you don't learn how to actually play a real instrument. So I took this idea and then tried to improve on it, and I did so in Adobe Illustrator. And basically the very first thing I wanted to do was figure out how I wanted my notes to show up. And so I went and got this little diagram off the internet which shows all the different strings on a ukulele and the notes that they represent. And I decided to create these little boxes instead, and each of those boxes has the fret as well as the individual note. Then, after I did all of those and color-coded them, I decided that I would then come in and look at just notes on a staff and see if I could implement anything there that would maybe help teach how to play music, as well as just be able to read the notes and, basically cheat by knowing what string on what fret to press whenever you are playing the game. And after I did that, I basically created this guy right here. And this is the basic idea behind what I wanted to design. Originally, I was going to have this line right here be where the notes are supposed to be played, but after a little bit of messing around, I decided it would be better if I put those in the center of the screen right there. And you can actually see the game playing right here. And there goes the notes across the screen. Now we're going to also go and play different sounds, and I made this into a video tutorial series to teach how to play ukulele as well. I don't know if anybody out there actually watched it or not, but this is the basics of the game whenever it's finished. So now what I'm going to do is go and show you how I took that information and then went and created the sprite sheets in Photoshop. So basically what I did was I took each of these individual pieces here. You can actually see if I click on them, I went and drew these inside of Illustrator. Very, very simple stuff. I just went and used the ellipse tool that you can see right there to draw those, and then the line tool to draw them down. And I decided to axe these numbers right here because I kind of thought they got in the way. And you can see everything is basically rounded off rectangles and text, nothing that complicated with lines. And you could use Inkscape if you did not have Illustrator available to you to be able to draw this stuff as well for free. And then I basically just went and copied everything out of Illustrator and pasted it inside of Photoshop with transparent backgrounds. And you're going to see here, if we go and zoom in, well, basically what I did was I had each of these individual notes. These are the sprite sheets that you're going to be going and drawing onto your game. And I just made sure that each of these individual notes were of equal length. So what we could do is just come over here to the ruler section. You can see that if I come right in here, that this was basically 140 pixels. And that is how all of the different notes are divided up. And those are the white versions, which were going to be used whenever that bar hits the note. And then we have the green versions that are identical, that are going to be used whenever the note isn't meant to be played. I then went and took all those individual notes as well. You can see every single one of them. And also, these are going to be 150 pixels wide. So that is going to help me go and write my code and be able to properly grab all these individual notes from the sprite sheet and use them in the game. And you can also see here is the white version of exactly the same notes. So that's how you lay out your sprite sheets. Basically just a matter of making sure that everything is precisely the same size so that you can very easily go in and grab those different parts or different images from the sprite sheet. And now I'm going to jump over and start writing the code. Okay, so I'm going to have three files here. I'm going to have the first one, learnukulele.html. I'm going to have style.css and ukulele.js. Now, I'm going to write all the code for JavaScript, but I went and did the HTML ahead of time because it's extremely simple. Just a basic HTML tag. English said the character set is UTF-8, made the viewport and the program itself be equal to the device width. I link to my style sheet right here. I am using a framework called Tone.js only to play sounds, and that is it. And then my ukulele script, and then the canvas that I'm going to draw on, and I'm going to refer to it by its ID of my canvas. If you want to get Tone.js, just go to tonejs.github.io, and there it is. And basically, these are the only two lines of code that I'm going to use, this one and this one. And all it does is you give it a note, and it plays said note. All right, so there is the HTML. There's the CSS. I just have the backgrounds be black, and that is it. And now we'll jump over and start writing some JavaScript. So what am I going to do first? Well, I'm going to do the easy stuff first. I know that I need a canvas to be able to draw on, and the context gives me all of the functions I need to draw on the canvas. I know I'm going to need canvas height and width. Width do first is equal to, and all the code's available in the description if I didn't say that already. All right, so I want to go and get the browser width, and I want to get the height as well. So window and inner height. So we got those. What else do I know I'm going to need? Well, I know I'm going to be using Sprite Sheets, so I'm going to throw those inside of an array. So what am I going to call this? I'm going to call this image name array. And then I just throw the names for all of my Sprite Sheets inside of there. And I already showed you the Sprite Sheets. So cube, Sprite Sheets, and ping. And then just go and do this for everything else. So musical notes and Sprite Sheet, ping, and then note, cube, Sprite Sheet, and white. And those will be used whenever I have the, they hit the little bar. That'll notify that the user should hit the string on their ukulele in this situation. And then I'm going to also link to musical notes and Sprite Sheet white as well. And there that is. Okay, so now we got our Sprite Sheet, all of the files we're going to be using. Well, I am going to then Sprite Sheets. I'm going to create another array for my Sprite Sheets, and I am going to create another array that is just going to be for my notes. And then I can use the Tone.js stuff. So I'm just going to jump over here, and I'm going to copy this line of code and paste it inside of there. That's going to allow me to play sounds. And then what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to have to run a setup function whenever the browser is all set up. And how you do that is you go add event listener and DOM content loaded. And if at any point in time I do something that doesn't make sense to you, just leave a comment down below. I am a YouTuber that actually answers their comments, so feel free to ask anything you would like. So of course now I need to go and create setup canvas, and there it is. And what am I going to do in here? Well, I'm going to set up my canvas, and how I do that is I go and I reference the canvas by ID. So get element by ID, and I showed you the name of that was my canvas. So there's that. Now I need to go and get access to all of the functions to use with Canvas, and you do that by creating the context. You go canvas, get context, and I'm doing 2D game here, so I'm going to throw 2D inside of there. Then I'm going to set my canvas width equal to the canvas width that I defined. Again, canvas height is going to be equal to the canvas height I defined. And I am going to fill the entire canvas by going fill style, and set that for black. And what else? Then you can see CTX, the object that has access to all of these functions for drawing on the canvas. I'm going to fill rectangle for the whole entire canvas. Upper left-hand corner is 0, 0, X and Y. Then I'll say canvas width, which is going to be the entire canvas, and canvas height, which once again will be the entire canvas. Now what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to look at what I want to finish with and figure out what parts are the easiest. So the easiest thing from looking at this is these bars here and this clef note and all of these different lines. So I want to set up everything so that I can both use my sprite sheets as well as draw those lines in. All pretty easy stuff. So what do I want to do here? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to load my sprite sheets. And we have to do this ahead of time if we're running any other code, otherwise it's going to cause all kinds of problems. So I'm going to do that in a function. I'm going to use a callback, which just means that I'm going to say a function is going to run after this function is done running. So I'm going to say function preload images, and I'm going to pass in all the files that it needs to load, and then I'm going to go and call this function callback, images loaded, callback. That just means a function is going to be called after everything is done running in this guy. So I want to keep track of all of the different files that I have. So file counter is equal to 0. Then I'm going to go num of files is going to be equal to whatever this array named files length is. So we get that. And then I can just cycle through all those files in that array. So I'll say for each, and then I'll go function, and I'll perform actions on each individual file. So I'm going to say file like this, and then I'm going to call another function, which, let's see, do I want to put that down here? Oh, I'm just going to put it directly inside here. So I'm going to say preload, and I'm going to call it image, and I'm going to pass to it an individual file, and then I'm going to define another function after that. I'm going to create preload image here in a second, so let's get rid of that. Preload image. I know what I want to do, even though you think I don't. All right, so what are we going to do inside of here? Well, I'm going to increase file counter first off, and then I am going to, when all the images are loaded, I'm going to call another function that was passed here, images loaded callback. So I'm going to say if the file counter is ever equal to the num of files, well, in that situation, I can call that function that was passed inside of there. So images loaded callback like that. And what I'm going to call is the render function that's going to draw everything on the screen. So I have all that set. So what I can do is put semicolons here, and then we can create preload image. Okay, so I'm going to say function. Okay, and then I'll have the URL for the image that I'm loading, and image loaded callback. Then I'm going to go and create an image object is equal to new image. Throw that in there. And then I'm going to say that I want to load, or on load, I am going to call this function. So image loaded callback. And then I have to define the source for the image, which is the image itself. And that's going to be the URL that was passed. And then I want to push this onto my sprite sheet array. So sprite sheets and push and that image. Okay, so we got all of that done. And what this is doing is basically just preloading all of my images for me. Good stuff. Now, up inside of Setup Canvas, what I can do is call Preload Images like this. And that is going to both preload the images as well as pass in the, whoops, what am I doing here? And pass in image name array. That's all of the array that has all the image files in it. And then I'm going to call a function that is called render afterwards. So what is render going to do? Render is going to basically execute over and over and over again and constantly update the canvas. So let's go and create render. We're going to add more stuff to render here as the tutorial continues. Basically, what render is going to do first is it's going to clear the entire canvas. How it does that, meaning delete everything that's on it, is what you do is call clear rect, start in the upper left-hand corner, and then go and do canvas width and canvas height. All right, and then after we do that, we're going to call a function called drawboard. Well, how do we know how to draw all of those different lines? Well, if I open up Illustrator again, like I said, you can use Inkscape instead of Illustrator if you want a free version of this. Basically, I use the ruler tool here. I draw the whole entire game out here, and then I'm going to use the ruler tool to define how big I want this to be. So if I draw with that, you're going to see over here it says 36.5. I'm just going to make that 36. And if I draw this down to here, you're going to see that it is almost at 100. So 36 to 100. And that's what I do. I go and I figure out what are the pixels for the beginning of each of these lines, and then how long should each line be. And then I draw them. Then I do the same exact thing for this line here, and for this line, and this line, and this line. I draw the entire finished game here on the screen, and then I just measure the pixels for where everything is. All right, pretty simple stuff. So I have to create function drawboard, and I'm just going to do this quick and dirty. So I'm going to say drawboard and throw that there. And what you need to do is you have to first off say that you want to begin a new path, which just means a new line that you're going to draw. I'm going to go stroke style, and I'm going to set it to that green. Again, I got that from Adobe Illustrator, but like I said, you don't need to use Illustrator. You can use Inkscape, same sort of thing. And CTX, and line width, and that was a 3-pixel line, so it's a 3-pixel line in here. I then need to say, where do I want to move to and start drawing? Well, I want to move 36 pixels, 100 pixels, because I just showed you that. And then I want to say that I want to draw a line to, and the line length inside of Illustrator was 2528 by 100. And there that is. And then I can say CTX and stroke, and that will draw the line. Okay, so inside of render, if we want to call for the board to be drawn, we just go draw board, and there that is. And then we want render to execute over and over again. There's going to be a whole bunch of things that it does. So to do that, you say request animation frame, and then you say render. And then the function basically calls itself over and over and over again. Made one little bug error here. This shouldn't be URL. This should be source. Okay, so we'll save it and we'll test it. And you can see that it drew the green line right there, and I just opened up my learnukulele.html file. Okay, there you go. Got yourself a straight line. Now let's make the rest of the lines. So I'm going to come in here to draw board again and put some more lines inside. And we're basically just going to do the same exact thing over and over again. We're just going to move to a different line. So there's this, and we know this from the Illustrator file that we drew. So it's going to be 100. We're going to change this to 200. We're going to change that to 200. So 25, 28, and 200, and 200. Everything else is exactly the same because all the lines start and end at the same place. So let's save it, jump over here, reload it, and now we have 2 lines. Good stuff. So what we're going to need to do is put in all the rest of the lines just by adding 100 to both of those. So I wanted 4 additional lines, so 300, 300, 400, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so you see how all of that is there. If you want to pause your screen, you can type that in. Then I want to draw the next set of lines, which are the lines at the bottom of the screen. So again, we're going to do the same sort of thing here. We're going to say move to, and we're going to move to 36, just like we did before, because all those lines line up. But we're going to change this to 800, and we're going to change this to 800, and then 36 and 25, 28. Everything else is exactly the same. Save it, reload it, and now you can see it's starting to draw that line. So let's draw the other ones. And in this situation, we're going to be adding 150 instead of 100 for all those. So there that is. And then I also went and drew the line down the middle of the screen, and I changed it to a yellow. So again, same thing. To draw down the middle, you're just going to go canvas width 1/2, and then whatever the height is, starting from 0 down to that, to draw from the top of the screen to the bottom of the screen. So save it and test it. And reload, and now we have all 4 of our lines on the bottom. They're going to represent the strings, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going to be the staff. So now what I want to do is go and call the sprite sheet and put that clef node inside of there. So how are we going to read stuff from there? Well, we are going to go CTX, and to draw from our sprite sheets, we're just going to say Sprite Sheets and 1, and we're going to get the first, or this actually, yeah, the first part out of there. And then we're going to, knowing by referring to our Illustrator file, we know we want to start in the upper left-hand corner, and then it's 140 pixels over, 362 pixels down. That's how we read from the sprite sheet. So what we're saying, we want the block from the sprite sheet that starts at 0, 0, has a width of 140 pixels and a height of 362. And then after that, we say where we want to draw it at. So we want to draw it 50 and 120. And then that's where the upper left-hand corner of the image we want to draw. That's where it is. And then we say how wide and how tall the image is. So it's exactly the same as that. And just get rid of this extra guy right there. And whoops, save that. And if you're wondering where we put those images in the array, Sprite Sheets array, we pushed all those images in right there. Okay, so we save that. And we jump over, and we can see that it loaded. All right, so that's how we pull images from a sprite sheet and draw them. So now what are we going to do? Okay, so what we're going to do is I need to figure out some type of character codes that I can use to then go and pull in these different note sprites over and draw them on the board. Now they take up 150 pixels each, so that means that this is going to be 150 pixels, and I'm going to have to cut from the upper left-hand corner 150 pixels wide, and then I'll figure out how tall it is. And then it's going to be, I'm going to move it over to the 150 mark and 0 for Y. Cut out this sprite once again, and that will grab the next note block that I want to draw. So I have to program that in. So how am I going to do it? Well, I have to think of a way to save all of this information, and I'm going to save it inside of a note array. So let's go and create it. Well, the first thing I want to do is to think about the code that I'm working with. I want to represent basically the OG. That's going to represent, let's do it this way, OG4. Let's go and look at this so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I pull this up, the very first note, which is going to be the 0 fret, which means you hold no strings down whenever you play this note, that is going to be the G note, and more specifically, the G4 note. So what I want to do is I want to have the first number be a 0, representing 0 fret. It is a G4, and then it is, notes either have a, it's called sharp, but it's a hash code, or they do not have a hash code. So what I want to do here is either have a hash code or not. Well, the very, very first note that you can play on a ukulele is a G4 at that 0 fret mark, and it is not a G4 sharp, so it's going to be a 0. So just what I need to do is then represent all of this inside of an array. Then I'm going to put it in an array. Then I'm going to convert it into a map. And the map is going to start off at the 0 point. Let's pull this up again. A lot to explain. So it's going to start at 0 to get this note. Then it's going to go to 150 to grab that note. And then it's going to go to 300 to grab that note. So let's go and make that array. So I'm going to call it note array is equal to, and then for that very first note, I'm going to say 0 for the 0 fret, G, 4, and then it's not A sharp, so I'm going to put another 0 inside of that. Then I'm going to say if you want to pull that information from the sprite sheet, you have to start at the X position of 0. All right? And then I need to do that for all of the other ones. So I'm going to say 0. The next note is C4, if you remember. You can rewind if you want to see it again. And then that's 150. So I need to do that for every single note so that I can cut out all of those individual sprites. And after I do that, this is every single one of them. And you can see they increase in the X position by 150 for each of the notes. And like I said, those are simply going to be used to get the individual sprites off of our sprite sheet. Then what I need to do is put all of those into a map. And I'm going to call this the note map. And how you create one is you go new and map, and note array. Throw that array in there, boom. Now you have a map which will act as a lookup table to properly draw the notes onto the screen. Okay, so now what do I need to do? Well, I probably should go and create my note class so I can create note objects. So to do that, just go class and note. And I have a whole entire JavaScript tutorial if any of this doesn't make sense, but chances are you probably left already. Yeah, actually, if you're still here, why don't you go and leave me a comment telling me I'm still here or you're still here. I would greatly appreciate it because very often I feel like I'm a man who sits in his basement and talks to himself. So for the constructor, what do I want to be passed inside of here? I want a name to be passed in and the X starting position for where we are going to start drawing the notes when they appear on our screen. So the note name is going to be taken from the note array that we have right here. So I'm going to say this name is going to be equal to the name that was passed inside of it. What am I going to do then? Well, I would like to find out if this is a quarter or a half note, or a quarter, a half, or a whole note. Where I'm going to find that is, see, this represents the fret, this represents the actual note, this represents if, oops, don't mess this up, this represents if it is a sharp or not. Well, I want to put an additional thing on the end that is going to represent what type of a note is it, a quarter, a half, or a whole. For now, that's all I'm going to add. And so I'm going to call this and type, and it's going to be this and get the name that was passed inside of it and slice off the fourth index, which is going to represent the note type. So this is going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's going to be an additional thing there that's going to represent the note type. Then what I want to do is define if my note is going to be visible or not. So I'm going to say this, is it visible or not? And I'm going to start every note whenever it's created as being visible. Then what do I want to do? Well, I want to go and get the tone for my note, which is going to be represented with this right here. So what I want to do is I want to start off at, or actually it's going to be this, so the whole way through the fourth index. So to get that, what I do is I go this file, I'm going to call it file name, is equal to, and this name and slice, and I want to get the 0 through 4 for that. Okay, then what do I want to do? Well, the type is going to, basically what I want to do is put like a buffer, because the type of note is going to change where the note shows up on our screen. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so here we go, and you can see right there, there is a half note. These are quarter notes, those are half notes. See how there's a space there? So what I want to do is change the X position for those notes, actually the tops and the bottoms, depending upon the note type. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to say if the type is equal to 4, that means it's a quarter note. Well, in that situation, I'm going to say this SS top symbol X is going to be equal to 140. So 140, the same distance as the sprite sheet. Otherwise, if it is a half note, which is represented with a 5, then we're going to double that up. So it'll give us twice as much space. And if it is a whole note, then we will increase it again to twice that space. So that's just going to define how far apart the notes are whenever they are drawn on the screen. So what do we want to do now? Well, I want to define where on the X-axis to start drawing. To do that, I'm going to say this top note X, and that's going to be either equal to the X start position that was passed here, or it's going to be 2490, which is the farthest right on the screen that I want to draw. So if they don't pass anything in, it's 2490. If they do, it is going to be equal to whatever they pass in. All right, so good stuff. Again, I'm going to do a similar thing for the bottom note. So I'm going to say this bottom note X is going to be either equal to X starting position, or guess what? 2490 again. So there's 2490. And then what are we going to do? Well, I am going to define a X value for grabbing note blocks from the Note Cube's sprite sheet. So I'm going to say this note cube and X. And then what we can do, we can say this has sharp. I'm going to say, does it have sharp or not? Is it a G sharp or just a regular old G? And to find that out, I just go this name, which was passed inside of it, and I want the character at the third index, and that will tell me if it's a regular note or a sharp or not, like that. And it's true, or otherwise it is false. Whoops, save that. Okay, and then what else do we need to do? A whole bunch of things going on with these notes. Well, I'd like to get the note code and then set the top note Y based on it. And to do that, we'll say this note code is equal to, and again, this name and slice. And I want to start at the first index. So again, this is 0, this is 1. So I'm going to start here, and then I want to get that. And that is going to give me the note code that I can then use for playing the tone with Tone.js. All right, so now I got that. Now what I need to do is basically set up every single note. So I'm going to say if this note code is equal to, and I'll say C4, well then I'm going to say this and top note Y is going to be equal to 270. And then this bottom note Y is going to be equal to 150. And then this note, I'll explain what this means, all this stuff means in a second. This note cube and style sheet X is going to be equal to 150. Okay, so what I'm representing here whenever I say top note Y, these are going to be, this is the top note right here. And let's select that whole thing. So whenever I'm drawing on the canvas, I have to draw the upper left-hand corner for this. And so it's actually possible for this to be negative. So whenever we drop, so whenever we drop this note down to this point, let's just grab it. Whenever I drop this note down here, which is the C4 position, this is going to come down to this line we have right here. That is going to be at the 270 point. Meaning up here where we're going to be drawing that line is going to be 270 pixels down. So what I need to do is make one of these notes. The next note is going to be down in this position, and that's going to be 220. And I can put that back. And then this line right here is going to be 170 on the y-axis. But it's actually going to be represented with this point up here where I have the little arrow. So that is how we're going to move those up, and they will actually be negative whenever we move up here because this line is going to be off our canvas up there, see? So that is how I am going to be drawing those notes. The bottom notes on the strings are actually going to change very little. They are going to be either 1050, 900, or 750 because I'm not really using this string right here. So that's how we're going to represent the bottom notes. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a question. So here we are again back with this code. And like I said, 270, that is the bottommost part on the staff. And then the bottom note is those little rounded off rectangles. That is going to start in the 1050 part. And then what I need to do, the 150 is actually going to be the sprite sheet. So this guy right here. So if we go and zoom into this, let's go zoom in. The C4 is actually this guy right here. So we know we have to grab it from the sprite sheet. That's going to be 150 pixels in on the x-axis. And that's where that 150 comes from right there. So now what I need to do is do that for every single note, which I went ahead and did for you. So you can see there's C4, D4, and hopefully you understand how we are drawing these different sprites on the screen. And you can see that they actually go negative. And you can pause your screen to type all these in, or just go and get the code in the description. Okay, and all that code's free, by the way. All right, so there's every single note that we want to draw on our screen. And we have them all lined up with our sprite sheet. Okay, so now what do we need to do? Well, we need to go and update these notes, and we need to draw the notes on the screen. So I'm also going to set one more thing, and this is going to be speed. And the speed, the notes are going to move across on the screen, and it's going to start off as 5. So what do we want to do now? Actually, this is going to be a lot easier. We are going to call a function, or create a function, called update inside of our note class. And what it's going to do is it's going to say this top note x is going to be equal to, and we're moving from the right side of the screen to the left, and we're going to do that at 5 pixels at a time. And that's how quickly we're going to move from the right to the left with our notes. That is the top note. And then we're going to do the same thing for our bottom note. And again, we will decrease it by 5 pixels each time it updates. Then what I want to do is if it ever goes past 240 pixels to the left side of the screen, I want to delete it. So I'm going to say if this bottom, I can just do it on one of them, note X is ever equal to 240 pixels, then I want to turn the visibility to off and or false. And that means it will not show anymore. That's all we need to do to update and get those notes on the screen. So now we need to draw said notes. So we're going to start off by saying if it's visible, then we can draw it. So if this visible, and then also what I want to check for is if it's in the middle of the screen or not, because if it's in the middle of the screen, I want to change to the white versions of the notes, meaning the user should go and, click stroke their string. So to figure that out, whoops, I need to go bottom and note X is less than or equal to, and I'm going to say canvas width divided by 2, which means the center of the canvas, and this bottom note X is going to be greater than or equal to, and canvas width divided by 2. So it's only temporarily going to be white on the screen. However, I'm going to add in a little bit of a sort of like buffer inside of there. Okay, so if that is true, then we know that we are in the middle of the screen. So what we want to do first is draw our top note. And how we're going to do that is we're drawing the sprite sheet again. We're going to say CTX draw image and go to the sprite sheets array. Whoops. Yeah, sprite sheets array. And specifically the third or the last one. So sprite sheets, and it's going to be this one, musical notes, and this is going to be the white version. So we want to draw that white version if we're in the center of the screen. So we're going to do this, and then we're going to say that we want to go this top symbol X and then 0. So that is going to start in the X position for the sprite sheet, and the Y is always going to be 0. And we're going to say we want 138 pixels to the right and 362 pixels down. Then after that, we can, let's get that out of there. And then after that, we can say where we want to draw it. And I already told you what top note X does. So top note X, and this is where we're going to be drawing it on the screen. Top note Y, and then it's going to be exactly the same size as our sprite sheet. So it's going to be 138 by 362. So let's throw that inside of there, and that's how we're going to grab the sprite and draw the sprite. Now what I want to do is check if I have to draw a sharp symbol or not. So I'm going to say if this has sharp, well, I'm going to grab that sharp thing and throw it on there. Otherwise, I am not going to do that, obviously. So CTX and draw image and sprite. The sharp symbol is in Sprite Sheets 3, just like before. This is for the white version, and it's 560 pixels in the sprite sheet from the left side of the screen, and 0 for the Y position because I want to draw the whole entire thing. And then it's going to be 138 by 362. And I want to draw it 25 pixels down from where the top of the node is. So I can say this, well, let's go and put this on the next line. So I can say this and top note and X plus 25 pixels. So I'm going to put it a little bit to the right of that. And then I am going to go this and top note Y, and I'm going to put it 60 pixels down from there. And then the size of the sharp is 362 pixels. So that's what that is going to be. And anything else I want to do? Well, I want to draw the bottom note also, and that's going to be CTX again. I'm drawing an image from my sprite sheet. I'm drawing an image, however, from Sprite Sheets 2 because the bottom notes look different than the top notes. And then I'll say this and note cube style sheet or Sprite Sheet X, and it's 0, 150 pixels. Each of the notes is 150 pixels, and 112. And then I want to go and get whatever the X position is, which we found up above. So I'll say this and bottom note X and this bottom note Y, which we calculated above again, and it starts at 150 pixels, or we're placing it 150 pixels, and that is going to be 112 pixels downwards. And that is how we'll draw the bottom image. And then what we can do is I can also, around this time, it makes sense to make the little sound if we would like. So trigger, attack, release. This is from the Tone.js library that we used. So trigger, attack, release is how you call this note to be executed. And I store my note codes. And then basically you define if it is a quarter note by putting 4n inside of there. And that's just what I'm going to use by default. All right, so then we have else. This is not a time for us to draw our white notes, so we want to draw our other notes. And basically nothing changes here. The only thing that changes is the sprite sheet I'm going to use. I'm going to use the colored sprite sheet instead of the non-colored sprite sheet. So let's just go and copy everything that is here, and let's paste it directly inside of there. And the sprite sheet in this situation is going to be 1, and this sprite sheet is also 1. And this sprite sheet here is 0. These are the colored versions of the notes. And absolutely nothing else changes because those files are identical except for the fact that one is colored and the other is not colored. So we got all those as well. And is there anything else I need to do here? Oh, I know. I don't want to play a sound because we only want to play sounds whenever the notes hit are non-white, which means they're only going to be white whenever they're in the center of the screen and they need to play. And that's it. That is the whole entire note thing. This is completely crazy. I hope you learned a lot from this because this is complicated stuff. All right, so what else do we need to do? Well, basically, to finish off everything, we need to go into Setup Canvas, because what I'm going to do is as I draw these notes onto our screen, I want to put a buffer between each of the notes. There's a space between the notes, and the space is going to change based off of what note type we have. So I'm going to say that I want to have note buffer, and the distance between the notes by default whenever they're drawn on the screen is going to be 170 pixels, just like I saw before. I'm also going to have keep track of the sum of all buffers so that every single time a note is drawn on the screen, we increase how far right the next note is going to be drawn on the screen. So we're going to constantly have to change those. And I'm going to say that note type is going to be equal to 4 to start off by default. What else do we do? Well, I am also going to create a for loop that is going to cycle through a song that we provide that is going to play. So I'm going to go whatever the song is, and whoops, I didn't define that. So let's go and do that. And the song that I'm going to use is actually, you'll be surprised. All right, so there's our song that we went and created. You can see there's all the notes that we created for it. So now I can go song and length, and we're going to cycle through every single note in the song and increment it each time through. And then it's just a matter of what we do inside of here. So basically, I'm going to define new x, and what we're going to do here is increase the x start value each time I make a new note. And I'm going to start at 2490 plus, and then I times 170, which is going to represent the difference or distance between the different notes. Then I'm going to have a note buffer, which is going to change based off of the note type, whether it's a quarter note, a half note, or a whole note. And then I'm going to add to the end of that the sum of buffers. And that is going to make sure that everything goes to the right off the canvas. Now I need to push all of these onto our notes array. So I'm going to go new and note and song and get each individual note out of our song and throw that right there. New X is going to represent the starting point for each of those songs. Then after that, I'm going to say if the note type is equal to 5, which is a half note, well then I'm going to go sum of buffers, because this guy right here is going to represent a quarter note. So if it is a half note, I'm going to increment this by 170. Whoops, there we are. And, well, I might as well just copy this. And if it's a whole note, which is represented with a 6 in this situation, sum of buffers is going to be 510. Now what I need to do is add a buffer between the notes based on that note type. So I'm going to say, whoops, don't take that with me. All right, note type equal to, and song I, and then I just want to slice off the 4th index, which is going to represent the note type. And then I'm going to say if note type is equal to, whoops, there we are, 4, well then the note buffer is going to be equal to 170. And this will be for the next note draw. Throw that there, do this right here, and then we'll go 5, whoops, then we'll go 5, and then we'll go 6, and then we'll go and change this to 340. And we'll change this to 680. And that is it. That's all we're going to do with the setup canvas. And now what I need to do is make render completely work, which is going to take a very small amount of code. All I need to do is inside of here, after draw board, is update and draw the notes. So I'm going to say for let I equal to 0. And then as long as I is less than the notes array length, which is all my notes, I will cycle through and update said notes. So I'll go notes and I have to call update. And then I have to call draw on the same note. And there it is. And there it is. And there it is. And we're done. There's all our code. We can go and test it. And if we reload it, there is a problem. So no problem. We'll just fix it. What's it say? Uncaught reference error. This name is not defined. And that is on 40? Forgot a period somewhere. So let's say 103. It's not there. So 40 is probably where it is. Let's go test it. 40. Yep, forgot that. Throw it in there. Save it. Test it again. Reload. And is it working? Yes, it is. Alright, so there you go, guys. Designed an entire game, programmed an entire game, all in one video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. And if you actually made it to the end, thank you very much. Only about 3% of people do. The only reason why I make YouTube videos is for you 3%. So if you have a chance, leave me a comment to tell me you actually watched the video. I would greatly appreciate it. And like always, please leave your question in the comments below. Otherwise, till next time.